Hi, I'm television's Todd Robert Anderson. This is a very special edition of the Film Pigs web series here on GeekNation. We decided to, we the pigs, decided to go to the movies. We found the longest movies we could find, one being The Hobbit and the other being Django Unchained. So you're going to get to see our experience firsthand at these movie shows over the holidays.
You're doing really well.
It's hard. You're very distracting. Anyway, here it is. It's a special.
What's wrong with the camera?
It got sad.
Hey there, everybody. It's the Film Pigs, and we just watched a movie, and we're going to tell you about it. Todd, what was the movie that we watched?
Is called The Hobbit.
This was like, I found this movie extremely boring. Gandalf is like this mighty wizard who will only use his magic when it's like at the very last moment when everybody's about to die, instead of taking care of business at the beginning of a fight.
Here's the ends of his magic. One is he can shake his stick and everyone collapses to the ground in pain. On the other end,
Pine cones.
he can light a pine cone on fire. I'm not kidding. So there is no consistency as to what that fucking bearded fuck can do.
I learned a very important screenwriting lesson.
Yes.
Is if you get to the climactic sequence at the end of the film,
Yeah.
where your hero characters are in an impossible to survive situation,
Right.
Yeah, what should you not do?
you should not. What you should not do is not bring in giant birds.
Oh, okay.
No
But,
birds.
yeah, this
but
is a-
if
this
they're
is-
all gonna fall because they're in trouble on the end of a cliff and there's giant monsters attacking them, you save them
Yeah.
with giant birds.
This was a movie where, you know, not obvious spoiler alert, but there's a big climactic sequence at the end, and they're quickly fucked, and then giant birds come and save them.
Yeah.
And
Well, because
that is-
Gandalf sends a butterfly gram.
Yeah, he sends a butterfly gram, and that is not. And I know this was source material. I get it.
And it was used in the original trilogy. That same
but
motif. where he sent a
still,
butterfly gram, but it's still
it's like
cheap.
it's like
yeah.
waking up from a dream
Yeah.
in the.
It just was, yeah.
It's like the
Everything,
end of
I'm
Saint
gonna
Elsewhere.
die. Oh wait, it was just a dream.
Well, because it was the characters themselves had no hand in figuring out the situation and
Yeah.
getting themselves out of it.
I'll tell you. You know, I liked Martin Freeman. I thought he was actually pretty
yeah, and
good.
I love Martin Freeman.
Yeah.
So.
You know, like Ian McKellen, he's
Yeah, of
great.
course.
And some of the, but none of the other people stood out as actors. Here's what I'll say: my main.
But also,
problem,
they weren't written anything. I mean, even the guy who is supposed to be the king character.
He was not charismatic.
He wasn't charismatic, but they didn't write him anything. All they
Yeah.
wrote him
He was just
like
scowling. They wrote him scowling
every
the whole
time
time.
anyone talked about him, all they did was list a bunch of stuff.
I'll
there
tell
was
you,
no,
so
there was
we-
no
you know,
character development.
Obviously, movie is famously made for 48 frames per second, which creates problems, and 3D. We watched a screener, so we didn't watch those. But it's not going to solve a main problem of the movie for me, which is when a movie is almost 100% done in computer, and a lot of the characters are all computer, it just doesn't touch me. It doesn't register for me. I maintain, and I may be proven wrong, that the brain needs real things to attach to feel anything. And you know, this last 10 years of movie making has just been rife with computer generated imagery, and it leaves me cold. It
Well,
just
and
does.
whether
it's
you're
unemotional,
but beyond that, with this particular movie, it's tell a fucking story.
Well, yeah, that's a,
There's
yeah.
no like
The
it's
first 30 minutes of The Hobbit is just exposition.
in a house,
Yeah.
in a Hobbit house, and then and every time,
aggravating.
and like most of the action sequences in the movie actually happen while someone is telling somebody else the story of something that already happened.
Yeah.
So even though you're showing us what happened, we know the outcome because the character in jeopardy is telling the story
Yeah.
through exposition
Yeah, no
and
tension, there's no
voiceover.
tension.
There's no tension.
could a director like, let's say, Spike Jonze, for instance, because he did
Where the
Wild Things Are practical, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you make The Hobbit practically, not with CGI?
I don't necessarily think it's about practical versus CGI effects, because if it's fantastic enough and it captures your imagination enough, because all of us sprung to life in this Hobbit movie when the stone monsters were fighting and the mountains were shifting.
Yes.
And
There's
we
a big
knew,
sequence when two mountains are fighting each other.
But they
but
were all
we knew,
CG.
but
yeah,
we
yeah.
knew it was CG. But the imagination, the imagination involved in that sequence caught our attention. So while I agree with you that practical effects are generally more effective for me, I'm also old, so it may not necessarily be about what effects you use, but it's about the imagination involved in your action sequences and your battle sequences. And also, I mean, I think part of the problem with the goblin fight and all that stuff is we weren't engaged in any of the characters. I mean, the only characters that we know about, that we understand in this prequel, are characters that we know live.
Gandalf and Bilbo Baggins.
Yes.
Right. And all the other characters that they created are throwaway characters that have no definition.
I disagree. Life of Pi has a CGI antagonist / second lead in a tiger.
Right.
Also, you know the lead character lives because there's a framing device, him as a 40-year-old man telling
Okay.
the story of what happened. It made it no less viscerally exciting, the scenes of him and the tiger on the boat. There was
Yeah, but
no,
I mean, I
there was
think-
no
I-
remove.
but I think- I
so
mean-
it's not just the pure. It's not.
But
the
you were
pure-
engaged in the character who is engaged with
Right,
the tiger.
but
That's what I'm saying.
all I'm doing is disarming your notion of knowing the main character lives is a prerequisite to enjoying a movie.
No. But I tried to agree with you and add that, especially when you're dealing with a franchise of films,
Right.
where you're doing a prequel, where characters from the original films are involved in the prequel. What
But
matters?
even in this movie, you knew because there was a framing device.
Right. But what I'm saying is, what would have made the movie matter more is if the supporting characters had been better developed, and the relationship between Bilbo and Gandalf had been more interesting.
I completely agree
then
with
we
that.
would have cared about whether or not those characters would have died, but we didn't.
Once again, I'm only disarming your criticism that we knew that they lived as being a
okay.
barrier to enjoyment.
But what? Okay. But I'm just adding to that. To that.
Gotcha.
I see what you're saying, I don't.
What is
necessarily
indefensible,
disagree.
whether it was shot practically or fucking 99 frames per second or anything, is the ending, which is one of the cheesiest endings in all of film that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's really cheap.
And that is a line between the hero guy, the former king,
the main dwarf. Yeah.
that we talk. He's not actually a dwarf, right? Isn't he?
They're dwarves. They're all
No,
dwarves.
but
aren't
They're a
isn't the main
dwarf.
guy not a dwarf?
No, they're all dwarves.
Oh, he didn't
Yeah.
look.
Okay,
They,
he's the
they
king
didn't make him
dwarf.
look like a dwarf.
No, there are no actual dwarves in this movie
no.
about
But they
dwarves.
made a lot of the guys with big bulbous noses
Yeah,
and
he
fat.
doesn't have as much.
Okay, fine. Handsome dwarf. Fine. Handsome beardy dwarf.
It's Brad Pitt dwarf.
His,
Not Viggo
his
Mortensen
line
dwarf.
at the end to Martin Freeman as Bilbo Baggins is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard.
It's awful.
And we predicted. He says this preamble, beat, and we said the B-side to the preamble, thinking there's no way that's going to be the B-side to the preamble. Yes, it was exactly.
So, I learned another very important screenwriting lesson, and that's if you use an incredibly overused cliche in movies that's supposed to like burst the audience with happiness, but it's been said 1,000 times before, the way you make it new is to have one character say the first part of the cliche, and then have the other character finish it for him.
Yeah.
Because that happened.
Right.
And it happened more than once.
Right.
So that's, it's like,
Like if I said, united we stand.
Divided we fall.
What?
Suddenly it's not a cliche.
If I said, it's not the heat, you would say,
I don't know.
It's the humidity.
there you go. And that, like,
And it's crackling
something
dialogue.
that's been said a million
If I
times
said,
before,
I get knocked down.
but I get up again.
Nothing's gonna keep me down.
Well, you do a third
We
of it.
mean like we went beyond Peter Jackson. I mean, we went beyond Oscar
And
winning
that is a moment where I will say they needed a better screenwriter, not just fucking him and Fran and whoever fucking.
Guillermo del Toro's got credit.
We're
on gonna
wrap it up.
Yeah, we gotta.
I
just,
just
no.
I think
We
they
gotta
all
wrap
need
it
to
up.
get out of the
We
fucking
gotta wrap
Shire.
it up.
And next, stay tuned for Django Unchained.
Django Unchained. I was not aware of the Django.
Enjoy jump cutting this, John.
Hey everybody. Welcome to part 2, second part of our movie review spectacular. It really is a spectacular because we just reviewed The Hobbit.
Yeah,
and now,
that was 3 hours long.
Yeah, and that was a really long movie. And Todd Anderson, what did we just see today?
Django Unchained, also 3 hours.
Ah, hey, Stephen Falk, what was Django Unchained about?
It's about a freed slave who goes on a revenge ride to try to rescue his wife, who's taken away from him by a mean slave owner. And Christopher Waltz is in it, or Christoph Waltz, and Jamie Foxx, and Leonardo DiCaprio, and Sam Jackson.
I think your synopsis was racist.
Yeah, it's completely racist.
It's so racist.
Well, this is Quentin Tarantino's latest movie, and while I've enjoyed it more than his last several movies. I thought Act 1 was really strong here, and then it kind of starts to meander a bit.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it was only about 20 minutes too long, and I actually really like Leonardo DiCaprio, and you couldn't have had all the action without all the talking.
Well, I mean, you just where would you cut the 20 minutes then, Smarty Pants?
Where would
I like
I? I'll
Leonardo
tell you where
DiCaprio
I'll
too,
tell you where I would cut it. There's a false ending that takes
Yeah.
about 20 minutes, where Quentin Tarantino shows up as an Australian. And there's no need for it.
Definitely cut that.
It's the definition of an up and back, as we call it in the biz, which means it's a little subplot that goes absolutely nowhere.
Yeah.
He leaves, comes right back, and continues the bloodbath. Don't need it. Could have got rid of 20 minutes. Smarty pants, pantsed.
Doesn't change the fact that you're a racist.
What?
Your synopsis was racist.
In what way?
You talked about slavery and stuff.
And you're white.
You're a white dude.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So automatically you're
Spike
racist.
Lee would not listen to this podcast because it would be bad for his ancestors. As someone said, I think Girl 6 is probably more offensive to Spike Lee's ancestors than this movie.
Well, I think so. At least we can agree that Django Unchained is at least 20 minutes too long.
Yes.
We can
it-
get
it was
there,
a good- I mean,
and-
I was mostly entertained, although I did, like, there were shifts in tone that I had a hard time with.
Yeah.
For example, like really graphic, brutal depictions of slaves being tortured.
Yeah.
Very realistic. And then in the next scene, it's just like a big, silly
Yeah, splashing
bloodbath with
bloods,
splash.
yeah.
And I like that stuff, but the two together, it kind of gave
Yeah, it
me,
was a little-
like I had a hard time going back and
It
forth.
was incongruous.
I
It
thought
was-
the
yeah.
quote-unquote Mandingo fights was unnecessary.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you could have had that subplot, the thing they were doing without it, and without the dog attack.
Which was. Well, I was expecting him to go Reservoir Dogs with the dog attack and not show it and do the kind of the less is more thing, and he just went more is more.
Yeah, but I will say I thought I don't usually like Jamie Foxx, and I usually don't like Leonardo DiCaprio. I thought they were both pretty good. Yeah. Christoph Waltz was awesome,
He was.
amazingly awesome.
He was really
like
good in this
Oscar
one.
awesomeness.
Yeah, he's
and
a lot
Sam
of fun.
Jackson playing a very sort of not thankless, but like
Oh, he's
role that must
awful.
have given
Yeah.
him. I thought he was really good.
Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah, and it was a kind of a brave role actually,
Yes.
playing the house
Yeah.
guy. House slave.
You thought it. Racist.
Totally racist.
Total
You're completely-
racist.
I'm distancing myself from the racism.
This podcast. Django Unchained.
Django,
Unchained.
3 hours.
Fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
Too long,
Still one of the
but
yeah.
way better than The Hobbit.
Yeah. Oh, The Hobbit.
Maybe a little more
You
racist.
could-
The Hobbit's more racist.
If you're
I
a white
think.
guy,
yeah.
you could. Yeah.
We are the film pigs.